Hi. I promise you that my slides aren't just like white. They have an actual background, but the projector doesn't show it. But that's all right. Hi, I'm Brynn, and that's the jargon that Vlad just read. I am the front-end lead for Pragma partners. I'm a dad, and someone has accepted me to be their husband. Mistake. And I like CSS. I think it's great. So today I'm going to be talking about new CSS features that you can use today that you would likely have used JavaScript for before. I'm going to use the example of a filterable card grid, and hopefully if I did all my work properly, at the end we will have one. So these are the things we're hopefully going to do. There's going to be cards that animate when we scroll. There's going to be filtering. We'll use popovers on the buttons, and yeah, we'll be able to click on some stuff. I should probably say there are two pieces of JavaScript running in this entire talk. I was going to offer a monetary bounty for it, but my wife said no. So if you think you can identify what they are, come up after and maybe we'll just have a discussion. So JavaScript has real costs. There's parsing times, can block painting, all your normal problems. Hydration might have some issues there. If you've got a lot of event listeners, they might run into each other and leak. And if JavaScript kind of just silently breaks, then your things don't work. But I will say that this talk is not anti-JavaScript, even though, I'm not anti-JavaScript, but I'm more, let's use like the HTML and CSS first, and then use JavaScript to sort of provide additional functionality when we can't just reach for the easy tools. This is more about thinking about being a bit more deliberate about the code that we write and use. So I would say in the last 5 years, CSS has really grown up. It's no longer just like, I want my background green and like floats everywhere. Please don't use float anymore, really. But we have container queries now and has selectors. This one, I don't see all around the place, but you should use it a lot, aka a parent selector. We have scroll-driven animations, view transitions, anchor positioning, and one that I'm starting to use a lot more, which is like the @starting style. This is just like, can I get animations by default? So that's cool. We don't need polyfills for any of these things. Maybe one of these is not baseline. For anyone that doesn't know, baseline is like a Chrome initiative to be able to say all major browsers support these features. If you ever go to like your MDM docs, you'll see at the top like hopefully lots of blue things, but mostly yellow and orange things these days. But that means these are available in browsers to use. Oh yeah, I should have gotten rid of this slide, but I didn't yesterday. But this is a rehash of what we're going to do. Very cool. So we might have some cards that reflow based on the size of our container. We may have written some JavaScript that may or may not look like this, depending if you're better than me, which is probably true. But essentially this would have, an observer, and we'd be checking for the size of the container rather than the window, which, as we all know, measuring off the window can be very, very painful, especially now that we're moving towards like component-based designs. It would be nice to be able to ship my component that just knows how big it or how it should look when it's a certain size, rather than like, my window is large. So CSS's solution to this is a container query. And okay, so I'm just going to run in front of here for now, but in this case I've used named container queries. These are great. As you can see, this card grid has a name. This container, you don't need this, but this is like anchoring it to this container here. So I could have a bunch of containers up the DOM tree and say, let's say this card grid got put in a sidebar and that was further up the DOM tree. I could say, I want this container to think about the sidebar and not the card grid anymore. And I could do styling based on that, just like a normal media query. Yeah, I probably could have nested these too. CSS nesting is good as well. You should do that. So this one's a bit like five-head, I guess. So normally we would use JavaScript to do some filtering without like running a page reload. So we might be using like Ajax maybe in a Drupal sense, or just like running some JavaScript on the front end that's just constantly listening for some event to fire. We can use like a checkbox hack to like use CSS as a state machine, and our very fun has selector. This is allowing us to sort of style from the parent and say, does a child inside have a certain value, and then do some styling on other children based on that. Oh yeah, you would have also seen like a pretty cute not selector. This one's also fun, especially when you can like nest hases and nots a lot of the time. Like grid card has not, this has that. It can get confusing. Yep, so we also may want to animate our cards. I think this is pretty standard. Thinking about like anime.js maybe, or like motion. But we need to write some JavaScript for that. We need an intersection observer so that we know when things get into the page and when they're out of the page, and sort of like where they need to animate and create their own timelines. I would propose to you to delete your intersection observers and just use CSS now. You'll see we have an animation timeline. There's a bunch of, oh, my styling's not good there. But we have a bunch of new like properties and values. So view is just a function. It's just like looking at the browser window and saying like, am I in view constantly? There's also like just the whole timeline of the document. Like there's a bunch of these. And then the animation range is basically just saying like, I only want you to start doing the animations when you're in this range. And there's exit as well, so like you can animate in and out. It's a thing. And then it just runs like a keyframe, which is great because we already write those, so that's awesome. So upon thinking, I don't know that I entirely did this, but we can talk about it. So it's entirely possible for us to like click a button, and let it do some stuff. Normally we might have to write some JavaScript to toggle a class or do some transforming as we have here. But we can use view transitions, also a cool thing that you can easily just add to every site. And there's an argument that you should do that by just setting it to auto, and you'll get that like fade in, fade out between pages. Very cool. All of these like sliding things, they're all view transitions. So yeah, we would just let view transitions handle all of the like difference between like the two states, and under the hood, your browser's kind of like taking a screenshot and interpolating what that's supposed to do, and then just going like magic, and it looks pretty. Like these are actually all individual pages. So they have all individual URLs, each of these slides. But hey, they can still slide through, and you can see that like the header and stuff still persists through. So you can fix elements to the page with a view transition. And now I think this one's like a secret winner of like, but like highly underrated, the popover API. Normally we would have used that for like tooltips and stuff, but I'm like, menus, mobile menus, just use popover API, it's great. Don't need your popper.js no more. No floating UI. We can just like basically turn that JavaScript there and all its dependency into like a dependency-free bit of CSS. And I've even got like blank lines in there, and it's still shorter. So you don't need no popper.js no more, no floating UI. Just specify an anchor name and where you want those things to live, and then there's some HTML attributes that have to go along with this, so I guess this is kind of a lie. But essentially CSS is handling all of the like transitioning between like on and off, and accessibility comes out of the box because it's supported in the browser. So the popover appears, but it just snaps in, sure. So this is basically like, we write our JavaScript and it's kind of just like, I'm here. Obviously you can write better JavaScript than this, but I'm trying to accentuate the problem. So we can use like the starting style to tell our popover what it should have been before we animated this thing. So classic opacity is the classic one, just started at 0. I'm almost certain you don't even need to specify opacity 1 there. I think it should have opacity 1 by default, and same with the translate. But I think in some browsers I've had some issues, so it's better just to specify. Firefox. So starting style is actually, yeah, the animation at the start with like the little cutting mat thing, that was all like everything just starts in the starting style and then just ends up there. Easy. So if we put all of this together, we have container queries, has selectors, scroll animations, view transitions, anchor APIs, everything. But it's all like, these are just words that don't really mean anything. This is our card grid. This makes so much more sense now that you can see, like, I've tried to go for a notepad background, but on these other pages you can't see it. But it's there. So yeah, we have, and you also can't see my cool border down here either. That's fun. But we have some filters. We can do all of these things. So this is our little checkbox down the bottom. Well, these are the labels of the checkboxes. They're all hidden. Our view transitions API is like doing all of the animations between the grid changing. Just go back to all. We have like scroll animations. Woo! And you can tell it's like not janky as well, because it's like run on the GPU, unlike JavaScript that runs on your CPU. So that's also fun. This like little form thing down here, popover API, you can see like when I click off, I didn't have to write any of that. It just happens. And same with these. These are all popovers as well. Click off, they're gone. Click on, scroll up. They go away by default when the element's hide. They come back when they're not. I don't know if I'm going to be able to... Yep, cool. It's over the side. That looks awful. My window. Bam. There's position try. It's awesome. The popover API comes with a position try CSS property. And you can basically tell it, like, if you imagine that there's like a grid around this whole thing, there's like top, right. Yeah, that was really hard, and you can tell that I had to check my left and rights. And then like top, center, bottom, you know, all around this element, we can specify, if I go and grab that and ignore my inline styling because I use JavaScript in Astro to build this thing, don't tell anyone. We've got this position try here, and it's literally like looking every time repaints to see, can I fit on the right first? And if I can't, I'm going to fall back to going on the left. And if I can't do that, I'm going to go to the bottom and then the top. Like, building that logic in JavaScript is a pain in the ass. You got to be checking, am I still able to fit over there? All of that. This all comes out of the box. I didn't even have to use my brain, really. Like this, I can't stress enough that like we should just be using this. Like any like mobile menu, pop over API. And I haven't done it here, but like it comes with like the backdrop pseudo element. So you can do the whole like, this is like has the dark background. And if you use that, your like actual background will be inert. So you can't even just tab in there by mistake. Genius. And it's all just in your browser. You don't have to support the JavaScript going forward. You don't have to worry about it. It just works. And the best thing is like JavaScript can be intimidating for like junior people. CSS, that's like the lowest of the low. And that's why I'm here. Like, I can't tell you, like, I'm like the CSS weirdo, right? But that's only because I was scared to write JavaScript for a long time. And I was like, oh, there's got to be a way. And then I just used to make like CSS that would just like crash my browser. Because I was like, nah, there has to be a way. And now like CSS has gotten good in the last 5 years. Like a lot of the things that we have to use like JavaScript for, like even masonry grids and stuff are like coming and they're here and they're good. Did I show that we have a container query? No, not yet. We'll just drag this in. So, well, also you can see like in your debug tools, you get all of these like nice things now. Like you can see this is a container. Well, maybe you can't now, but you get all these like little pills in your like debugging, and you can just like click them. You can get like the right, like you do when you get grid and stuff like that. Like you can, I can even toggle these things to be like in their starting style. If they're a popover, like I can just trigger them on. The tools are good. Browsers are good now, mostly. Mostly. But yeah, all of this, on this page, there's one bit of JavaScript running and all it does is trigger the, because there's a JS version of the views API. So these don't actually change the page. All it does is just like tell the browser like, transition, that's it. And that's all these are doing, and it's great. It's awesome, use them now. So, you do still need JavaScript, despite what I would tell you. We still need it to like fetch data from remote sources and things like that. I don't ever see a case where CSS ever does that, and if it does, that's so egregious. And as like a CSS lover, I do think that it's getting like too powerful. Even though I love that. If we need to share stuff across lots of components that aren't necessarily related, it's probably a JavaScript solution. If we need to make sure that like things this component needs some information from here to here. Drag and drop as well. Maybe that will come. I could see it. I could see a future, but I'm also a weirdo. I guess like the goal of this talk is not to say like you should never use JavaScript. As we've all seen, I do use it sometimes, but only when I feel like it's completely necessary. There's like we should choose the simplest tool for the job. And CSS is really easy and really digestible for people to use. And like you don't really run into the like, that doesn't fit my logic problem. I don't have to read someone else's code really. Like CSS is pretty small, like pretty easy to understand. And I guess like for me in general, I'm trying to like move my CSS into like an API, CSS API-esque thing. So it's super easy for other people to like understand my like decision making and make it easy to update all of these things everywhere. So yeah, the goal is not to not use JavaScript, but to like reach for CSS instead, especially when we have like interop now, which is like making sure that at a minimum we have an agreed amount of CSS that's going to be shipped to all the browsers in a certain amount of time. And there really does seem to be a big push from the main, I don't know if you really call Edge a browser, like a main browser. I guess it uses Chromium under the hood. They help. But like the three main ones, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, to sort of get like CSS into a state of usefulness and no longer this thing that like people really don't like to use. And I think that like libraries like Tailwind really highlight that people never really used CSS properly. But there's tools now to help us use CSS better. Like we have layers and stuff, like there's no real reason that you should run into like cascade problems. So yeah, I think CSS is just great and we should all just use it. And if anyone has any questions or wants me to grill their site, I'm happy to do that. Or you can grill my sites. I'd love that too. Yeah, that's me.
Brynn, what a guy. He is a front-end developer that strives. Sorry, I'm not going to go here. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. Did you cover starting style or did I miss that?
I did. That's a starting style right there. It starts off the page at like a negative rotation. We can look at it. No, I mean, we've got 10 minutes, why not? Anyone that's been to my talks before, this is where I thrive, not in the actual talking part. Oh yeah, I'm gonna open source this. So this is an Astro project. It uses view transitions by default. There you go. View. And you can see like, when I click that bad boy on, I get, this is what my starting style is. And then it will use this transition here. So yeah, you can specify all of the timings and all of that like you would just a normal CSS transition. You can use keyframes as well. So you can do like some really cool ones. I would say that there's like really good transitioning tools now. There's the linear function. You can do some really cool stuff with that. You no longer have to do that like to, from, or like 10%, 20%, 30%. Like you can specify an actual animation timeline really. But like, yeah, you just get pretty much like interesting animations for free by doing just like, in this case, 3 lines of code. Well, 4 lines of code. Woohoo!
Is that one per page load or?
If you were scrolling, it would be every time it comes in. Into view. Well, it depends if you set up your like timeline to be that way. Yeah.
I think they should have called that was instead of starting style. Like you've got has and is. You should have was.
No. No, I think that makes sense. Like has and not and is are like pseudo selectors. This isn't really a pseudo selector. This is like an app property, which is like, don't get confused with actual app property, which is another thing. And that's how you can add typing to your CSS. Yes, we have typing in CSS. We should use it. Okay. So we have another, don't think I use it in this, but we all know what a custom property is, yes? Okay, awesome. You just use that with like dash dash and just go on your merry way. Instead of doing that, we have another app property called app property. And you specify app property dash dash your variable name, and then open up your brackets like that. And in there you can tell it like, this is a color, this is a degree, this is a length, all of that stuff. And your like DevTools will even tell you like, you provided me a string, should be not that. And it also allows you to do other funky things like, anyone seen like the rotating border, like gradient border? Oh hell no, come back to me after this. I'll pull one up, I've melted 100 times. But notoriously hard to do, because like, how does CSS know how to rotate between degrees? It's just like string to string. So you just end up in this thing where like you say go over 300 milliseconds, and it just like goes like, and then 300 milliseconds later, and it doesn't, there's like no transition, it's just like an instant. If you use app property, now you're telling like this variable is using a degree, and CSS goes, alright, I know what that is, I can do that. It's a number, easy. You should use them. So yeah, you can literally type your CSS like custom properties. Is that too far? Maybe. But I'm thinking about doing it, like, yeah, I think it's good. Yes, sir.
So I'm a backend guy, so they don't normally let me talk to front end guys unsupervised. So
Okay.
when a backend person looks at front end work, they try to go for the more programmatic solution, I think.
True.
How do you convince someone to use CSS rather than trying to hack it in JavaScript? Like, what's your pitch?
What's my pitch? I think for me, it's like we should always be trying to use the simplest solution for everything. Like, you know, you don't sit there with a chainsaw and cut your like steak, do you? You could, but like your plate is gone as well. This is like a very similar thing. Like you're using, like JavaScript is an extremely powerful tool, but like, why? You don't need to. If we can just use like a simple tool, and like I understand that CSS can be daunting because it's not like other languages. It's like the cascade, it gets in the road, like how come my style is getting overwritten by this other thing? There's other things to help us do that now. We have like @layer. So you can define, like your front end dev can literally give you a layer in the CSS that like you would override anything else without having to worry about the cascade, and all you're worrying about is what you're doing now. Oh hell no. So I think like the main thing that I would lean back on is you're over engineering your problem. And I think like for backend dev, that makes sense. Like we don't really want to use, well, that's not entirely true. We most of the time want to use the simplest tools we can. And this is like zero dependency. Like your browser ships with this stuff. And yeah, your browser ships with JavaScript, but it doesn't ship with Popper.js, you know? It's just like another thing to maintain. And especially now when we've got all those crazy things happening with NPM, like this is another problem. Yes, we should use PNPM. Be a good boy, use that, or girl. But we don't really need to worry about that, especially when TSS tools are getting really mature.